everyone. You're watching CBC News Network. I'm Natasha Fatah. Breaking news from the world of American politics. U.S. Senator John McCain has died following a battle with brain cancer. His body left the family compound north of Phoenix, Arizona. His death came the day after his family announced he was discontinuing treatment. The 81-year-old was known as a Vietnam War hero for enduring years of torture during 5 years of captivity. He was a respected politician on both sides of the political divide and by both parties, and made 2 runs at the presidency. The last was in 2008 when he was defeated by Barack Obama. More recently, he was a fierce critic of President Donald Trump. Lindsay Duncombe takes a look at Senator McCain's life and his legacy.
There was something about John McCain, a resilience, a spark that transcended the harsh divisions of American politics. Born on the U.S. Naval Station at the Panama Canal, John McCain followed his father and his grandfather into the Navy. As a young pilot, McCain was a gregarious flyboy, according to his brother. The defining ordeal of his life came in 1967. McCain's jet was shot down over Vietnam. The northern Vietnamese stabbed him with bayonets when they pulled him from the lake. From captivity in excruciating pain, McCain spoke to a French TV crew.
I ejected and broke my leg and both arms.
For 5 years, McCain was held prisoner, much of that at the notorious Hanoi Hilton. Because his father was an admiral, his captors offered early release. McCain rejected it. He was tortured and attempted suicide. He returned home a hero, a celebrity, and different. McCain said he gained a seriousness of purpose, leading him eventually to politics. First in the House of Representatives, then more than 3 decades in the Senate. His willingness to go against the Republican Party gave him a reputation as a maverick. He took 2 runs at the presidency.
We're going to take those big money and fat cats and establishment people and knock them on their ear.
Defeated by George W. Bush in the 2000 primary, he became the Republican nominee in 2008. That campaign was defined by this moment, his choice of a little-known governor from Alaska as his running mate. Sarah Palin was popular with the right-wing Tea Party, but was viewed by many as a punchline. Barack Obama won the presidency decidedly. Although he didn't run, McCain became a central figure in the 2016 campaign, outspoken against Donald Trump, provoking insults from the reality TV star candidate.
I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you.
McCain remained critical into Trump's presidency, although some said he didn't go far enough. After his brain cancer diagnosis, McCain returned to the Senate, blasting partisanship in his speech.
We've been spinning our wheels on too many important issues because we keep trying to find a way to win without help from across the aisle.
In a divided party, a divided country, McCain earned respect from all corners. Sadness today is bipartisan. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Washington.
Neil Herland joins me now with more details and more reaction to Senator McCain's death. So let's begin with the details as they were confirmed. What do we know at this point?
Well, the office of U.S. Senator John McCain confirmed the death. He died outside Phoenix at his family ranch in a place called Cornville, Arizona. Let's read the official statement put out by his office. It reads, Senator John Sidney McCain III died at 4:28, that's Arizona time, on August 25th, 2018. With the senator when he passed were his wife Cindy and their family. At his death, he had served the United States of America faithfully for 60 years. And after the death took place, the body was transported to Phoenix, Arizona. A formal funeral is now being planned, and we are told that some of the people who will be delivering eulogies include former U.S. President George W. Bush and former U.S. President Barack Obama.
Neil, the confirmation of the senator's death for many was found on Twitter, and now all the reaction, most of it is pouring through Twitter as well. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, we have a lot of reaction, and we're going to start now with the current president of the United States, Donald Trump, a man who has not always seen eye to eye with John McCain. Let's bring up his statement. My deepest sympathies and respect go out to the family of Senator John McCain. Our hearts and prayers are with you. We've also heard statements tonight from Barack Obama, the former president. He has paid tribute. Few of us have been tested the way John once was, or required to show the kind of courage that he did.
Okay, thank you, Neil.
You're welcome.
Well, earlier, I spoke to former chief correspondent of CBC News, Peter Mansbridge, and he says McCain was a stalwart within the Republican Party and stood up for conservative ideals even when he visited Canada.
This was a really special guy. There's a thing about the U.S. Senate. There's always been a kind of lion of the Senate at any particular time during its history. Somebody who's regarded by their fellow senators, looked at upon with, a certain kind of awe, sometimes even fear, that this person really stood up for a lot of things. In the past, before John McCain became the lion of the Senate, it was Ted Kennedy. So you have these two guys who follow each other, Ted Kennedy and John McCain. Here's the irony of the two of them. They were good friends, opposite sides of the aisle, just as you've been mentioning. Kennedy a Democrat, McCain a Republican. They were good friends, spent a lot of time together. They both died from an aggressive form of brain cancer, and they both died on exactly the same day. Ted Kennedy died on August 25th, 2009. And here, 9 years later, same day, John McCain dies. Two lions of the U.S. Senate.
That's just an incredible coincidence, Peter. Yeah. Let's talk about McCain and his relationship to Canada. How familiar was he with his northern neighbors?
Very familiar. In fact, he was, there's an international security conference in Halifax every year. It was kind of started by Peter McCain and his friends. When McCain was the Minister of Defense for Canada. And it's become very important in the security field around the world. A lot of key people have come to that in attendance each year. John McCain was always there. He was a good friend of the conference and a good friend of Canada. Thought it was an important vehicle to talk about the issues that matter around the world, not just to his country, but to all countries, and especially those in the NATO alliance. So he was familiar with Canada. He'd been here many times, and he was particularly close to those he dealt with in Halifax.
Peter, we often talk about politicians, but there was something different about John McCain. For many, he wasn't just a politician, he was a patriot. Help us understand the difference between those two things and why McCain fell into the latter group.
Well, I think partly due to his past. He was the son of a U.S. Navy admiral, grandson of a U.S. Navy admiral as well. He becomes this naval pilot, flying off the deck of aircraft carriers. He ends up in the war. He ends up being shot down on a mission over Hanoi in the Vietnam War. And then, of course, as you've said many times already, he was a prisoner of war, suffered torture. I mean, he was in terrible shape when they captured him after his plane crashed into a lake in Hanoi. But, that gave him the passion he talks about, and he said in the speech, his acceptance speech when he ran as president in 2008, the passion of a patriot, that he realized in those years that he was under terrible strain in that prisoner of war camp, that he was living for his country, not just himself, but his country. And in there, you describe the guy as a patriot, but as you also describe him, he was a politician, and a pretty good one who didn't get tied down to always on party lines, and that's why you saw him having these fights with Donald Trump in these last couple of years. But, you know, as I said right at the beginning, he was a special guy. I mean, he had this knack of making people feel comfortable. I remember at the Halifax conference in 2013. It was the 50th. It was held on the night of the 50th anniversary of the JFK assassination, John Kennedy's assassination. And they asked me to come and speak at the conference to talk about the impact that had on the world, the impact it had on people's relationships with government and politicians, and the impact it had on the media. So I went out there. I gave a pretty serious speech, about 40 minutes long, and included in the speech was my belief that all these conspiracy theories about the JFK assassination were ludicrous, that they didn't bear any serious study. So I gave the speech. People, you know, applauded. They were all very pleasant. I came off the podium, stepped down, and who jumps up to meet me? John McCain. He comes up, he puts his arm around me, and he says, "Great speech, Peter, but listen, kid." Now, he was only 10 years older than me. He says, "Listen, kid, you know, I know that Kennedy story pretty well. If you can explain to me why Lee Harvey Oswald, the guy who was convicted as the guy who was the assassin of John Kennedy, if you can explain to me why he was in the Soviet embassy in Mexico City 6 weeks before the assassination, I'll believe there was no conspiracy." I just stopped dead in my tracks, looked at him, and I said, "You're a conspiracy theorist?" He said, "Nobody's ever explained that to me." And off we went back to sit down in our seats. And I thought, you know, here was a guy who went out of his way to make that point to me, somebody he'd never met before. But he wanted to make the point, and he was that kind of guy. He would talk to anybody.
That was Peter Mansbridge, former chief correspondent of CBC News. And again, if you're just joining us, the breaking news out of the United States, Senator John McCain has died at the age of 81 after a battle with an aggressive form of brain cancer. You're watching CBC News Network. Our top story right now, U.S. Senator John McCain has died after losing a battle with brain cancer. McCain was 81 years old, and he was a decorated war hero. He also ran as a Republican presidential candidate against Barack Obama in 2008. McCain was known for reaching across the aisle in an ever-increasing divided America. For more on John McCain's mark on American politics, we spoke with Kevin Eckery. Now, he's a political commentator who had actually met McCain on several occasions. Eckery spoke about McCain's impact that went well beyond the world of politics.
Represented the idea that country came first, that duty came first, the kinds of things that we used to admire and that I hope we admire again, because you don't become great without great people like this who essentially put everything else in front of their happiness, because duty and doing the right thing is more important than anything else.
You know, Kevin, certainly for specific generations, perhaps the younger ones, Senator McCain will be the guy who lost to Barack Obama in 2008. He's the guy that picked Sarah Palin to be his running mate. He's also the guy that, aggressively argued against President Donald Trump and was very critical of him, despite the fact that they represented the same party. But he had a lengthy political and public career prior to that. What was that legacy? Who was this man? What did he stand for?
Well, remember, he ran for president in 2000 and almost made it. He almost beat George Bush for the Republican nomination in 2000, and he had what he called the Straight Talk Express. I mean, where he recognized that he was the underdog, and so he decided he was going to compete by just being as open and transparent as possible. And the thing is, that really was how he conducted himself. I mean, sure, he was a United States Senator, and he wasn't without ego, for goodness sake. You can't be a successful politician and not have some kind of an ego. But he also, had a sense of priorities, and he had a sense of right and wrong. And we need that. I mean, we need someone who can stand up and say, that stinks and we shouldn't tolerate it. You saw some of that in the roles he played in trying to bring transparency to the American political process by having, restrictions or reporting or opening up the reporting that had to happen for campaign contributions. You saw it in the work he'd done for 15 or 20 years as a leading figure in the Senate on defense and international affairs. This is someone who truly wanted to do the right thing. And it's also someone who was deeply conscious of the fact that he was a flawed human being. Like I said, I mean, he did not hold himself out as perfect. He blamed himself for the failure of his first marriage. He talked, openly about things he could have done differently. But it's also a man who, again, consistently tried to do the right thing, who cheated death many, many times, whether it was bailing out of an aircraft over North Vietnam or having or being part of the infamous fire on the USS Forrestal that was triggered by a live round that came off of his aircraft and killed 134 men. I mean, so this is a guy who faced down death many times. So when it finally came calling in an inexorable way, he was prepared. He died knowing he had done everything he could do.
Political commentator Kevin Eckery joined us from San Diego, California. And this is a look at the White House, where the flag is flying at half-mast in memory of Senator John McCain. McCain died after battling an aggressive form of brain cancer. He was 81 years old. You're watching CBC News Network. We'll be back in just a moment. Back to our breaking news, U.S. Senator John McCain has died after losing a battle with brain cancer. He was 81 years old. McCain was a decorated war hero. He also ran as the Republican presidential candidate against Barack Obama in 2008. McCain was known for reaching across the aisle in an ever-increasing divided America. For more on this story, we were joined earlier by political strategist and consultant Rina Shah in Washington. She spoke about how McCain was a one-of-a-kind politician in the United States.
Many of my colleagues who I had the pleasure of working on Capitol Hill with, we're sharing so many memories of a man who stood for principled leadership. He was someone who is a rarity now, and I tell you, we don't know that we'll see anybody like him again in the coming years on Capitol Hill, someone who was beloved by so many across the political spectrum. It is a very sad day that at the age of 81, he had to go out with such an aggressive, very bad brain cancer, one that has a terrible prognosis. He was a guy who could have fought through anything. And people with this type of brain cancer, we know from science, from medical experts, that they typically don't make it through this. And I think he could have made it through anything else. But again, at this point in his life, I think he went out on a very high note. Given his career, what he was known for personally, I am very saddened tonight to talk to you about this passing. People that believe that, look, we can set our differences aside and we should come to the table and accomplish something by agreeing on the very few things sometimes that we agree with. Consensus builders, people who believe in compromise. John McCain was one of those people. It's because early on in his life, when he went through what he went through with Vietnam and came away from that and was a young senator and said, it's time to put the past behind us and move forward. That says everything about the man's character right there. The fact that he believed that bygones were bygones and that we can move ahead and see a new day together with people that ideologically were not always aligned with us, that means something. In the spirit of American greatness, sometimes we talk about American greatness. That is one of the cornerstones of American greatness. The fact that we come together to do things together with people that are just not the same as us. And I really worry that that is something that is going to be missing for a long time. And with his absence now in the Senate, I just wonder who's going to step up and take that role. He was a genuine man when it came to bipartisanship. He genuinely believed in it. And so I worry about that actually in the coming days. I gave him my vote when he was running for president. Look, I believe he would be our president today were it not for the pick of Sarah Palin. She just wasn't for everyone. He was a man for everyone. And that's what I think was kind of made them a pair that couldn't quite snag the Oval Office. But look, he did the best he could. The values that he put out when he was on the presidential trail, how he spoke of those values, that was important. And I'm so glad he ran so that America could see that there was somebody that really believed in that.
Political strategist and consultant Rina Shah joined us from Washington. Well, Neil Herland is back with more details on Senator McCain, the death, and also the reaction. So, Neil, we're hearing from his daughter. What does she have to say?
Yeah, Natasha, some of the most stirring words are coming from the family, and the daughter has issued a formal statement. She was there at the deathbed. Let's bring up some of those words. I was with my father at his end, as he was with me at my beginning. In the 33 years we shared together, he raised me, he taught me, corrected me, comforted me, encouraged me, and supported me in all things. He loved me and I loved him. He taught me how to live. Now that he is gone, the task of my lifetime is to live up to his example, his expectations, and his love. We are also getting reaction tonight here in Canada from some of our political leaders, both the Prime Minister and the opposition Conservative leader. From Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, he had these words on Twitter: Senator John McCain was an American patriot and hero whose sacrifices for his country and lifetime of public service were an inspiration to millions. Canadians join Americans tonight in celebrating his life and mourning his passing. From the Conservative leader, Andrew Scheer, sad to learn of the passing of Senator John McCain. His decades of service in defense of freedom crosses party lines and touches freedom-loving people across borders. On behalf of the Conservative Party of Canada, I extend my condolences to his loved ones. And finally, from Stephen Harper, Canada's former Prime Minister, Laureen and I are saddened to learn of the untimely loss of a great American hero, Senator John McCain. There you have it. So Senator John McCain also touched people in this country as well as the United States.
He absolutely did. Thank you, Neil.
You're welcome.
And as we head to break, we want to play for you one of John McCain's most poignant public addresses. Now, this is after making a return to the Senate less than a week after he learned he was going to be battling an aggressive form of brain cancer. He had returned to vote for moving ahead on legislation to dismantle Obamacare. This is how he closed that speech.
I'm going home for a while to treat my illness. I have every intention of returning here and giving many of you cause to regret all the nice things you said about me. And I hope to impress on you again that it is an honor to serve the American people in your company. Thank you, fellow senators. Mr. President, I yield the floor.